Well, good morning, everyone. That's pretty good. That's good. Good morning, everyone. It's good. Good to see everyone here. My name is Don Olander. I'm the executive director of the UCLA Associates, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 2017 summer breakfast program. And today's topic is around emerging trends, readiness, and agility in cybersecurity, and we're even going to explore the blockchain elements of cybersecurity today. So that's going to be a good one. I'm really happy, as is the entire board, about the attendance today. I think we tried doing this meeting last year here at the Poly Pavilion Club, and it was an enormous success then. We thought we'd give it another try, and I think this might be the magic formula. A combination of doing it more in the morning rather than the afternoon, and doing it here at Poly, which is a really great and conducive venue. Andy and his group have put together an amazing program for you guys today. We have some sensational speakers and panelists, but before we get started, I know we want to drill down on these topics. Before we get going, though, I wanted to touch on a few items. One is I want to first thank, this is an amazing, great thing for us. We have 4 sponsors for today's program, and I want to thank them. We have 2 platinum sponsors, SailPoint and PCM, and 2 networking sponsors, Tripwire and Fish Labs. So I encourage you all to visit their tables out there. In fact, if you're willing to drop off your business card at the SailPoint table, there's going to be a drawing at the end of the program for some incredible prizes, including Amazon Echo. And Jim Rinaldi of JPL could tell you how to implement that in your office environment. So thank you to our sponsors. Secondly, we have a table today dedicated to Ask Me About the IS Associates. We have several board members in attendance, so anyone who's wearing one of these colored ribbons, please grab one of us and ask us about the IS Associates. But you can also visit the table. So I know a number of you here today are not currently members, but maybe you want to learn more about us. So please visit the information booth. And then also on the back of the program, we're going to be doing a Poll Anywhere survey at the end of the program. And you'll see a GS code at the back of the program. Don't scan it yet. I know everybody who has scan software on their phones are ready, willing, and able to do that. But just wait until the end, and we'll get it all started at the same time. And then finally, there's going to be, as you saw on the agenda, a panel of blockchain experts up here and a moderated discussion around blockchain. And if you're anything like me, you have a lot of questions about blockchain. We have some index cards out at the front table. So during the break, please feel free to write down any questions that you might have about that, or about anything for that matter, and we'll collect the cards and be able to share those questions with our panelists. So with that, let me just turn it over to our program chair, Andy Schley, from Sony Pictures, and appreciate everyone coming. So Andy?
Thanks, Don, and thanks to everyone who took the time this morning to come out for this event, and thanks especially to our speakers and panelists who agreed to speak at the event, because that's why all of us are here, is to hear from you. But before we get started, we'd like to hear from one of our sponsors. We'll have another hear from our other one just after the break. But I'd like to invite SailPoint to come up to give a short presentation. I am happy to say that Sony Pictures is a SailPoint customer. We implemented their platform a couple of years ago, and it's worked well for us. And I'm also really happy that they were able to sponsor this meeting today. Oh, and we've got to get the microphone on. Oh. So I was really impressed when I came in this morning, and I got here right about just at 8, and I expected, oh yeah, there might be a few people here, and the room was half full. I think that, you know, the mechanics of LA traffic mean that a morning start is a good one because people will get on the road quickly and be here, which makes, I think, we'll have to do the statistics, but our percentage of people who show up was probably higher than usual because you don't have anything that happens during the day that keeps you away. We'll keep you away from those awful things in the office. So you ready? All right, please come on up.
Thank you very much. We are truly honored to be here today and to be with many of our current customers and certainly with a lot of folks that we would love to have as customers. We are SailPoint. We do identity and access management, but from a governance perspective, how do you govern access? How do you govern who has access to what? Many of you have PIM tools or PAM tools around privilege access and vaulting for passwords and such, like maybe CyberArk or Beyond Trust or Thycotic or some of these. We integrate very tightly with those products. We have an open platform. So we integrate with the likes of many, there's 50 of them that we are actually open with. And by doing that, you get the full picture. So it feeds from HR, you're getting actual information as to who should have access to what, where they got that access, why they have it, should they have it, and then from the tool you can actually remediate and actually remove that access, delay that access, put it under a credential. You can do a lot of different things, both aggressive as you want, or as nice and lenient as you want until you get the results. This is a little bit different than passing spreadsheets back and forth, trying to get people to comply or fill out, yes, these folks have access, these people don't. Just a few slides, and I'll get out of your way so you can get on to bigger and better things. SailPoint's attempt is to open your perimeter. We want to empower your users and enable the business. And by doing that through identity, who essentially has access to your business. And we need to be able to do it securely and confidently. We're #1 for 4 years in a row on the Gartner Magic Quadrant. And for the last 3 years, we've been on the Forrester Wave Report as their top-ranking company. We believe the way forward is identity management, understanding at the core who has access, whether that's a contractor, whether it's somebody that's been at your company for years and years and has piled on access as time has moved forward and jobs have changed and careers have improved. Does the access that maybe follows that individual, is all that access necessary? And can you start to remove it and make it more streamlined? And can you prove it to someone if they came and asked you? We do this in a number of different ways. We focus on on-premise apps. We are mobile device management compliant. We work through web applications. We hit all the directories, all the major directories you can have. We focus on structured data, and that would be anything related to a database or anywhere you might have tables or schemas that organize your data. But we also look into your unstructured data. Where do you have sensitive data lying within your organization that is just random? It's an Excel extract, it's an Oracle pull that someone has stored on a laptop or have thrown up in box, and guess what? It's full of payroll data or whatever data you consider important. Maybe it's the designs or drawings for that next big thing, who knows? But at the end of the day, you want to know where that sensitive data is lying. We worked in the infrastructure. We have 90 out-of-the-box connectors, and we can basically connect to anything and everything. Last year, across our whole install base, and we have upwards of 900 customers, we only had to build 3 custom connectors. That means out of the box, we can handle 99.something% of our customers' needs. We're a governance-based approach, so the idea is that you can prove it to an auditor, you can prove it to a government agency if you need to. We were the first to open up the platform. We want it to be open. There'll actually be customers, clients, prospects, even our partner community, and even our employees building out functionality in a web-like store to improve experience, improve functionality. So we have gone the way of, let's make this a community effort to improve identity and access. We can do hybrid environments. We are fully enabled in the cloud with one of our products, multi-tenant SaaS. You can be cloud 100%, or you can be on-premise if your business requires that, or many companies like a combination of both. Certain things you want to be on-prem, certain things you can have in a hybrid environment, and that works out really well. And I mentioned earlier that we extend to both structured data and we extend to the unstructured data. And that's the SailPoint difference. We are the market leaders, and we intend to stay there for as long as possible. This is all we do. We only focus on identity. So there's nothing to fall back on. We have to do really, really well in this space. And just to give you a timeline, 2007, we kind of pioneered this idea of governance. 2010, we went into really being able to provision, but also deprovision. Deprovisioning is important, just like provisioning. In 2013, we launched our cloud effort and built our cloud-based product. And in 2015, that's when we launched into unstructured data. And then this year, by the end of the year, it's already been announced, we're getting into some what we call identity analytics that are very, very interesting as well. And we have a 98% customer retention, and we'd love to speak with you. We're back here. We've got plenty of prizes, and some of you are customers already. Please stop by. We'd love to speak with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that presentation again. Thank you again for sponsoring, and please stop at their table, prizes and lots of information. So I'd like to introduce our first speaker, who is Josh Zelonis from Forrester. He's a senior analyst at Forrester and has been working in the cyber intelligence area for a while. He comes to Forrester from a background in product architecture, and please join me in welcoming Josh.
Thank you. Good morning. So as introduced, I'm Josh Zelonis. I'm a senior analyst at Forrester. And my primary focus areas, if you have questions in these areas, you're probably going to end up talking to me. Incident response, threat intelligence, and vulnerability management. People laugh and say I like to put the fear of God into the people. That was a joke. So if you're not familiar with who Forrester is, we're a market research company. And we work with businesses and technology leaders to develop customer-obsessed strategies to drive growth. Today I'm going to talk to you a little bit. I'm going to start off with an overview of the threat landscape, talk a little bit about how threat intelligence can help, and I'm going to finish with an example of how threat intelligence may have made some of the things that we've been seeing in the world the last few months a little bit different. Particularly, I'm going to be diving into the Eternal Blue and WannaCry vulnerabilities so that we can kind of see how threat intelligence can really shape vulnerability management for the better. So like all good presentations, I'm going to start off with the problem statement. 53% of enterprise organizations reported a breach in the last year. If you take a look at this, over 40% have had multiple. So looking at this, and I'm going to be using the term enterprise a lot through the conversation, and I want to just kind of baseline here. Forrester considers an enterprise anybody that's 1,000 or plus employees. So looking at this, you can start to understand that when marketing says it's not if, but when you are going to be breached, this is what they're talking about. So what are the problems? How are we getting breached? And as a follow-up to the previous survey question that Forrester had asked, we asked, how are you getting breached? And number one is software vulnerabilities, software exploits. Interestingly, looking at things like exploit kits, which I'll dive into a little bit more later, it's been over a year since an exploit kit has needed to use a zero-day attack in order to go and compromise systems on the widespread scale that they have been. That means that we're just not doing a very good job of patching our systems. User interaction, this is going to be phishing. This is getting an email, business email compromise, so somebody pretending to be the CEO and asking you to do them a favor, or malicious links, or even just malware or attachments. And then stolen credentials is another real fun one. I like to explain this to people in terms of there being 3.5 billion worldwide internet users. And so whenever Yahoo comes out last year and announces that they were breached for 1 billion credentials, that's 28% of worldwide users. Now, I'm not going to suggest that many people in this room reuse their credentials, but if you lose your passwords to your email, people can go in and do password resets at the very least. So just, this is part of how this gets commoditized, is the moral of that story. So now this is going to be the part that's no surprise to anybody. 63% of enterprise decision makers feel that having a lack of budget is either a challenge or a major challenge. But the interesting thing to take from this is that when somebody gets breached, the wallet's open. And so when somebody no longer is fighting against that lack of a budget, where are they spending their money? And especially in the context of prioritized post-breach. So of course they're going to start looking at security and audit requirements. This is regulatory. This is how am I going to keep myself from getting a ginormous fine. You have your security and privacy discussions. This is the board level awareness that we've heard talked about. Target years ago was really kind of the turning point for board level awareness, in my opinion. But number 3 here, this is the fun one. This is the threat intelligence. Increased spending on threat intelligence capabilities. What is it that people are seeing from threat intelligence that is so important that it is number 3 whenever they've been breached? If you don't take anything else from this talk today, I want you to think about threat intelligence like this. Threat intelligence is a question asked and answered. What we have here is the cycle of intelligence that I've taken from a Joint Chiefs report. And it describes the cycle in more detail. And interestingly, it's also on the CIA's K through 12 site, which is kind of funny that it's broken down for kids. But planning and direction, this is where you go and you ask the question. This is where you go and you look and you say, I need to know more about this. I want to know how dark web hackers are targeting my organization. And based on that question, you'll go and build a strategy for collecting data. And you pull this data together, and it's unstructured, it's just data at this point. And so you need to process it and turn it into something that an analyst can look at and make judgment calls based on, build their own analysis that they produce and then provide the answer. So while the majority of threat intelligence vendors that you're going to come across are focused on providing you either what I refer to as raw intelligence, which is essentially collected and processed information. So they'll go and scrape the internet for information, put it in a consumable form that you can pull from some API, or you'll have a finished intelligence product, which is the full answer, that they've gone, collected the information, they've processed it, and made their own analysis based on that, so that you have a finished intelligence report that you can read. So you've asked this question, and now you have a couple-page document that has that answer for you. Again, for the majority of people in this room, all you ever need to think about for threat intelligence is that it is a question asked and answered. And from that perspective, what is threat intelligence? Because you have vendors that are selling you threat intelligence. And two vendors may both be telling you, hey, we have the best threat intelligence product around. And the sad thing is that they're selling two completely different products based on completely different sources, targeting completely different information. One vendor may be focused on brand reputation or identifying whenever a DNS name is registered that is similar to yours, and another one may be going and tracking geopolitical events to provide awareness for executive travel so that you can protect your executives. Others, people are likely familiar with Mandiant and the APT1 report many years ago. That's getting into the kind of threat actor targeted intelligence. So when we're talking about threat intelligence, it means a lot of different things. And for those of you who are Forrester clients, I recommend that you take a look at a recent report I put out, a vendor landscape on external threat intelligence, because I try to break out a lot of these different categories. But over dinner one day, I had one of these vendors ask me, they said, so what do you think threat intelligence is? And I said, very simply, it's anything used to inform business risk. I mean, that's really the beginning and the end of it. So when we're talking about threat intelligence, we need to have a goal. And so I follow that up with saying that the goal is to find a way to optimize business processes and provide a language for describing a threat. Now, as far as improving business processes, one of the first things that I recommend to clients when they contact me and say, how do I get started in threat intelligence? Or what threat intelligence feeds should I be subscribing to? And I always tell them I can't answer that question for you because it is so specific to your organization, to your vertical, to the size of your organization, to any number of different things. And as I mentioned before, 74% of targeted attacks use email as a vector. But how is it using email as a vector? Are we talking about credential theft attacks? Are we having links to an impersonation website where you're trying to steal customer information? Are you spear phishing and trying to target executives with malware? Are you just phishing in general and trying to get a ransomware outbreak to make some money? There's so many different ways that something is relatively straightforward and is phishing can affect different organizations. I actually had a manufacturing company call me one day and they said, our biggest concern with phishing is that our distributors tend to be small organizations, mom and pop size shops, and they're getting attacked by business email compromise, people spoofing us, telling them that they're late sending their payments with invoice included, and these people aren't, I don't want to say aren't educated enough, but they're not educated to the threat. And so then what happens is then they end up losing money. Business email compromise is roughly $1 billion industry right now, according to the FBI. So building a risk register, and I'm going to finish on this. My first recommendation to any organization that's wanting to get started in threat intelligence is to build a risk register, to go and put together a list of the things that keep you up at night and prioritize that list and start working through that list, doing workups to understand how that threat applies to you in a manner that you're going to be able to design mitigation strategies based on. And that brings me to what I call my big picture slide. So if I could get a quick raise of hands, who has familiarity with what exploit kits are? Okay. So exploit kits are essentially, it's software that is leased, it's rented, if you will, that incorporates a number of browser attacks in order to go and try to exploit and infect users who are browsing to this exploit kit. This is a business. These cyber criminals that are going and building these exploit kits, they're advertising the vulnerabilities that they're exploiting to go and help drum up more business. Now, for the big picture here, the way that they drive traffic to exploit kits in order to commoditize that, be it through banking Trojans or ransomware, is generally through malvertising attacks, which is horrifying, to be honest. Everybody from the NFL to New York Times and BBC have been hit with malvertising attacks. This is where somebody will go and find a less than trustworthy ad company and go and rent time or impressions back to an exploit kit. So essentially, you're going and you have your site and you have your regular customers coming through. All the Monday morning quarterbacks are going and hitting NFL.com, and what they're doing is they're getting hit by the ads that are getting posted from the third-party ad company, and they're using that to infect people. So the malvertising, it routes your traffic to a traffic shaping site. Exploit kit, you get infected, they make money. Strategic web compromises is similar, but it cuts out the middleman of the advertiser, and they'll just go and compromise your site in particular. And so what happens in this particular case is that they will add a little script or something on your page to go and create an additional request that will then send the user to a traffic shaper, exploit kit, infection, and profit. And we were talking earlier about the 28% of the internet that was lost when Yahoo was compromised for 1 billion users. So there's a number of different email attacks that happen going through this process. People will go and look for trustworthy email addresses to send spam from because they're less likely to get blocked. You can't do reputation analysis on an email address that's coming into your organization for a completely legitimate email account that the credentials were lost for. So what happens is a big problem is, again, the spamming, the phishing to the traffic shaper, exploit kit, infection, and profit. So I've just talked about a number of different issues here, ranging from malvertising to strategic web compromise to stolen credentials, phishing. How do you defend against this? And here's where the big picture comes into play. If you understand that the exploit kit authors are going and advertising, they're advertising frequently on the dark web, the vulnerabilities that they're exploiting, and they're renting these exploit kits for like $500 a week. How hard is it for somebody to go buy the exploit kit, or even just look at the advertisements, come back and say, these are the browser vulnerabilities that are currently being exploited by the 3 biggest exploit kits. You patch those, you've solved everything to the left of that. Think about that. Think about putting together a big picture so that you can understand and mitigate multiple threats by finding where the single point of failure in the attack chain is. So now we're going to talk a little bit about intelligence applied to vulnerability management. March 14th, Microsoft released the patch MS-1710 that fixed, among other vulnerabilities, the Eternal Blue vulnerability. A month later in April, the shadow brokers dumped the NSA toolkit that included the Eternal Blue exploit. So what happened here is, on March 14th, a sophisticated hacker would have been able to go and perform a diff on the patch and likely identify what the vulnerabilities were and start exploiting them. April 14th, every kid who gets out of school and goes home can start exploiting this. A month after that, WannaCry happened. That's 60 days after the patch. A month after that, NotPetya. 90 days after the patch. 90 days after a nation-state grade vulnerability kit. Well, the vulnerabilities were patched for this. 90 days later, there was still havoc being released. And the interesting thing here is that one of the first things that came out when WannaCry happened was, well, organizations just can't always patch these things. I mean, let's look at the National Institute of Health, healthcare. They probably had applications that couldn't be patched. Microsoft even went so far as to go and release patches for Windows XP, which is unheard of because it's been end-of-lifed for so long. But they even went back to fix that. Now, the interesting thing about this whole conversation and dialogue is that it takes away from the fact that, according to Kaspersky, 98% of the compromised systems from WannaCry were actually Windows 7 variants. How big an impact did that Windows XP patch have? There's something to think about here. I mean, we're having problems patching Windows 7 boxes. So again, I'm going to touch on another problem statement, and that's that security teams are responsible for going and identifying vulnerabilities throughout the organization, prioritizing and reporting them to operations, who inevitably have to go and fix these issues. A lot of security people don't respect the fact that operations has a budget, has limited manpower, and has to prioritize the work that they're doing on top of all the work that security is generating for them. So this kind of gets me to the problem of communication and where threat intelligence can help. I pulled this off of the MITRE website about CVE 17144, which is the eternal blue. So we see it's a SMB version 1 exploit, remote code execution somewhere in here, remote attackers to execute arbitrary code. I'm going to walk around for a minute. So taking a look at this, we have remote attackers execute arbitrary code, SMB v1, CVSS score of 9.3. I had a vendor come to me and say, we don't understand why people didn't patch this in time. We said it's a 9.3, that means patch it now. I said, well, very simply, the security team walks in to the operations meeting and tells them they need to patch this because it's a 9.3, they're going to get laughed out of the room. What we need to do is find a better way of talking about these vulnerabilities. So what could we have communicated better? Well, it's likely that people were aware of, at least peripherally, the shadow brokers, or that there had been an NSA toolkit which had been lost. We have the vulnerability code. We know it's remote code execution. And so that means it doesn't require user interaction in order to exploit. In fact, you only have to be on the same network to exploit another system that's running this SMB1 service that ships by default with Microsoft Windows, which means it's pervasive through everybody's organization. It's almost like we completely forgot that things like Code Red and SQL Slammer happened years ago. This was the perfect setup for a worm. If you look at it and you analyze it and you say, what is the real risk here? You have a pervasive service with remote code execution. It's begging for what we saw. And to just make it a little bit more rich. It wasn't so much that Microsoft patched this in March, and so it was 60 days or 90 days, but the owner of SMB over at Microsoft, back in April of 2016, so now we're talking about a year earlier, was begging people, please stop using SMB version 1. In this particular case, you didn't even need to apply the patch. You just needed to follow Microsoft guidance and disable SMB version 1. There's been multiple blog posts from Microsoft talking about how they've disabled it. Very few organizations actually have a need for having SMB version 1 still in place. So if you can't patch, mitigate. And that's really what I wanted to kind of summarize and bring everything together to, is that if we understand that software vulnerabilities are the leading cause of us being compromised, and we start looking at these critical and high vulnerabilities and doing threat intelligence workups on them, it's going to help us communicate within our organization with the business. And I recommend to people that they be ready to have a board-level conversation about why this needs to be patched before they go and start talking to people about this having a 9.3 CVSS score. So with that, I have a picture of me without a beard. And I want to thank you all for your time. Is there any questions?
At one point, you talked about some corporations that have a lot of customers that are much smaller than that, and that's how it works. But is there a trend on, you see on how those corporations are dealing with it at large?
So the question, we're going to start running around with the mic in a second, but I'll repeat the question real quick. So whenever I was discussing the manufacturer who was having problems with small distributors getting compromised with business email compromise type attacks, for that particular situation, because it wasn't a loss of data, if you will, it was a loss of money on the distributor side. I hate to say it, but it was less of a priority. It was a concern, but it wasn't something that was going to have regulatory issues. And so in that particular case, what we worked up was to go and start helping with education downward to the distributors in order to go help them understand the problem. And it's the same problem that you get, honestly, within different business units in a large organization. I've had CISOs come to me and say, look, my users tell me that their job is to read emails and click links, and they're going to keep doing that, and it's not their problem, it's mine. And frankly, my response to that is I hope that they don't treat their personal email the same way, because they're going to get compromised all over the place, and they're not going to have corporate security to fix it for them. In the end, that would cause a loss for you, because while you're supposed to be getting production out of them, they're going to be busy calling Equifax and trying to straighten out their lives. Beyond that, there's the third-party risk issue is pretty big, and there's a number of threat intelligence companies that do provide specific intelligence to third-party risk, and that has been a growing trend. In my own career, I actually was responsible at one point for going and monitoring third parties that we were sharing information with, and getting them to fill out questionnaires to say that they needed to, or that they met certain security controls. It didn't work. Frankly, so I was at Pacific Gas and Electric, which is a large utility up north, and the California Public Utility Commission required us to go and share usage information. And so all the third parties who were now getting customer usage data, they knew that we were mandated to do it, and so they didn't put a whole lot of effort into filling out the questionnaires. That's a running problem, and why you're seeing more and more that people are doing threat intelligence workups on their third parties and monitoring for mention, because that is absolutely how people are getting in.
Just a quick question. Earlier you mentioned that threat intelligence is around informing business risks.
Yes.
Do you have any recommendations to how we can make threat intelligence a priority or relevant for people outside of the IT and information security organizations and those who are actually helping drive the businesses?
I would say that you don't need to make threat intelligence a priority for them, that it's more how you live your life as an example. And I know that sounds horrible. But the thing is that even looking back to the classic Lockheed paper that introduced the cyber kill chain, there was early discovery that what we're experiencing as security professionals, whenever we get an alert in our SIM, for instance, that should trigger a question. And this gets into the wheel for the life cycle of threat intelligence, that you go and you have this alert generated, and what does this mean? Is this relevant? Is this real? So many different questions that you need to go through and research and ask. And it's my feeling that security teams need to start modeling their processes and recognizing that it is, in fact, an intelligence process. And what happens when you start doing that is that you start coming back with better answers to things. And you start being able to go and communicate outward the needs, as I was just discussing with vulnerability management and the discussion that security has with operations to get things prioritized. If you're able to go and leverage what is effectively internal intelligence, and I don't want to dig too far into what is internal intelligence versus external and whatnot, but understanding that all the processes that you have in your security operations center are actually threat intelligence operations. And if you start modeling and thinking about it in terms of that, then all of a sudden what you're looking at is that we're not solving a 30-year-old computer security problem. We're solving a 3,000-year-old intelligence problem. And they famously, the intelligence is supposed to be the second oldest profession. So we have a lot of history to learn from, and I think that that's something that that we as security professionals need to start doing. Who has?
Right. I guess it. Okay. So you mentioned earlier about the fact that the challenge is, a patch comes out, getting it out there, operations versus, we'll call it the security group. And thinking back to, sometimes the best defense is a good offense. And being from operations, the biggest challenge I see, and I'm curious what you're seeing out there, is making it more effective to get these things out there quicker, faster, and with less disruption. Because I would say the biggest challenge you have from an operations point of view is, great, I got the patch. Look at the effort it takes to get it out there, the testing to make sure it's not disruptive. Are you seeing any change in that area is where I'm getting to? If the time from they discover it, they patch it, it can get into production with minimal to no disruption becomes easier, I think you're going to get better adoption. Now I'll turn it over to you.
Honestly, I took an inquiry call one day from somebody who was looking to relax their SLAs for getting patches applied. And I told them that 30 days has been pretty much industry standard forever. And I think they may have gotten off the phone and scratched their head a little bit, because they were talking about 3 days for a critical 14 days. But the fact of the matter is that 90 days after a 9.3 on the CVSS score was released, people were still getting owned by the Eternal Blue vulnerability. So it's not about having SLAs, it's about meeting them. And I agree that that is a problem, and it's a problem that I frequently see. I'll even say that it's something that a lot of people don't recognize, is that an agile, now I'm going to blank on the term, but in the agile development process, basically, we're looking at like a 10 business day, 14-day turnaround here, sprint. There we go. So whenever you're looking at the sprint is longer than the SLA for remediation of a vulnerability in your software, there's a reason why these sprints are the period of time that they are. The reason, you have to do testing, because if you go and you put in a fix that, well, forget breaks things. What if it doesn't actually fix the problem or introduces new ones? There's processes we have to follow, and I am in no way discouraging people from going and trying to have aggressive SLAs, but make sure that you're meeting them. And if you're not, be realistic about what you can do and start from there. Because we've already seen that, I mean, we're talking months, we're not talking days, and that's a problem.
Sorry, if I could ask a follow-up to that. But you're putting the emphasis on the operation. You're putting the emphasis on the operation. I'm asking the question, what are the manufacturers do? So the example being Microsoft, who used to know for their monthly patches, and they've gotten into the business of security more seriously over the last couple of years. What are they doing to make it, I'll use the word easier, to make these things come into place sooner?
I actually had a call on Tuesday with a large automobile manufacturer, and the discussion was around how we are prioritizing and making changes. And the statement was made that there's no good time for an outage. It costs us money immediately.
Hello.
And the time it takes to go and distribute these patches is downtime. So then what happens is we end up having conversations about, is this critical? And this is really gets into the threat intelligence discussion of being able to really understand and communicate that something is critical, if you will. As far as deploying and testing, I really can't tell you about the technologies or improvements from an operations perspective, how to go and deploy things better. I know that containerization and continuous integration environments are helping in a large way, but as far as in an operations environment, whenever you go and you have a controller that you just can't take down, I mean, it's tough. But understand that there's other mitigating factors that you can put into place. You put a next-gen firewall in place and have it just disallow any type of SMB-v1, and you're making strides in the right direction. There's companies that offer virtual patching, so you don't actually have to apply the patch. The idea is that you will eventually, but that they will detect and mitigate threats in real time for you, and that they can push those out immediately. So there's things that can be done, but it is a challenge. And I certainly don't mean to put all the onus on operations, because as I tried to explain, I completely understand that operations have a job to do aside from fixing security problems. So.
I think it's time for one question.
So you mentioned that as part of managing your threat is to develop a risk register.
Yes.
But it seems like in the conventional way of actually developing a risk register is just to look at the past and compile your data and analyze what are the risks, right? The things that are actually going to keep you up at night. But how is that going to carry you forward when there are new vulnerabilities, when there are 0 days, when you are actually putting things, designing secure systems, maybe talking to other secure systems, and the fact that you're having two secure systems talking to each other, now you have a system of systems when things could just emerge, like it could have emergent behavior. How do you develop a risk register for those kind of scenarios? And when it comes to that also, how do you assign likelihoods and consequences to those things? How do you tackle that?
So what we're getting into then is breach detection. And it's my feeling that a lot of the technology that's out there for breach detection is either kind of breach mitigation. I'll start with breach mitigation and the fact that it's starting to recognize that this program's acting differently. You go and you have other technology like deception technology. I just published a report on deception technology. And if you look at that, you're essentially setting up honeypots around. And it gets deeper than this, but I'm going to keep it high level. You set up honeypots around a network. How real do those honeypots have to be? And I would argue that they don't have to be. They don't have to fool an attacker more than just connecting to it, because what you're actually looking for, and what the underlying premise or the underlying thing that detection technologies needs to do in order to stay ahead of the curve is that you need to be focused on identifying business use violations. Because that, in the end, the exploit itself isn't the problem. It's what follows it. Now, it could be that your hard drive's getting encrypted, or it could be that some nation-state actor is trying to go from your device or take that process and leverage it in order to go and further look for data around the network. It gets more complicated when we talk about web applications, because if you're vulnerable to SQL injection, they can just download your database directly, and that's hard to stop. But in general, what you're looking for is business use case violations. And if you go into your security mitigation strategy just looking for how can I find where things aren't behaving as they should be, then you're going to be able to be ahead of the curve. For the threat intelligence, being able to be proactive and know that an attack is going to happen is, at least at this point in time, it's not the realistic goal of threat intelligence. You're never going to get a phone call from the vendor that's providing you threat intelligence services saying, hey, chatter on the dark web, they're going to hit you at 6 o'clock. That's just not going to happen. And so what you need to do is you need to understand attack trends, and you need to develop a mitigation strategy based on a detection strategy based on identifying business use case violations.
All right, Josh, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, Josh, and thank you, everyone. I see, really happy to see that we've got trouble with chairs. There will be more chairs put out at the break. We can't disrupt things too much. But I'd like to now welcome Mark Van Holsbeck, who is the Chief Information Security Officer of Avery Dennison. He has a long career at Avery Dennison. I believe it's over 30 years, and has grown and into this position facing and dealing with all of the threats that Josh just spoke to us about. So with that, let me welcome Mark Van Holsbeck.
Good morning, everybody. So I first have to apologize. I thought I was coming to a healthcare conference, and I was going to present on the risks of becoming mature. But I see they got me talking about something. I'll wing it and see how it goes, so let me know. So as I was introduced, Mark Van Holsbeck, CISO at Avery Dennison. I've been in IT for 40 years almost. It's a lot of numbers. But with Avery for 35 of those years. I've had a lot of different jobs, from developing code for manufacturing systems, project management, systems analyst, desk side support, user help desk, and IT consulting, and the most current job is IT security and risk, which is right now my most fun job. It keeps me busy. I'm never bored. Don't come in the office and say, what do I do today? So, yeah, I think my intention here is to share with you my vast experience and my gray hairs with all of some of my compatriots here, and explain, how we've done our security program and how we've enabled it to a mature environment, and how you guys can do the same thing. So I will tell you a little bit about Avery Dennison. Oops, I was supposed to show you this screen. Let me start over. So this is, hindsight is 2020. The point is, I've had some experience and I just want to share it with all of you. So who's Avery Dennison? Well, Stan Avery started the business over 80 years ago, and now it has operations in over 240 locations, 50 countries, with about 30,000 employees. So that just gives you, telling you that to give you an idea of the scope of the responsibility we have in security. Avery makes branding labels, tags, and sticky things that make your products that you see on the shelf identifiable to what they are. We also specialize in woven materials, so the suits and all the stuff that have the labeling, that's what we do, as well as RFID technology. So that's our going forward futuristic technology capabilities. So that's a little bit about Avery Dennison. So I'm going to make you guys do some work. You're going to have to do this hand-raising thing for my benefit, so I know where I need to guide my presentation, because I've got a fork in the road and I need to go left or right, depending on how you guys respond. And also it's for your benefit, so you can learn how the room is doing, how other organizations are doing in this spectrum of maturity. So this is the maturity scorecard, if you will, the traditional one. Gartner's got one, NIST's got one, ISO's got one, and consultants have them as well. Maybe Forrester has one. So, but I wanted to find out from this group, how many people think that they're in a maturity level 4 to 5 right now? A few of you. How about if I added 3 to that? 3, 4, or 5? Okay, a little bit more. All right, so good. So I'm going to go to the left on my conversation. But let's talk about these. Is everybody familiar with this? Who's not familiar with this maturity level scheme? Then I won't have to go into it. Okay. Well, I'll basically, it's just from really immature ad hoc controls and processes all the way to very mature. And you have repeatable, actionable activities, continuously learning and improving upon your program. From my experience at Avery and other conferences I've been to, I do see that there's quite a few people still at level 1. Their hair's on fire, they come into the day, and that's all they're doing is, when you ask them, what did I do today? What did you do today? I don't know, I just was fighting fires all day. We don't want to be in that position. We obviously want to be in a more mature environment. So hopefully this presentation might help you. So see, these are some of I broke the presentation into the basic fundamentals, things you need to start with. And then I'll talk about the next level of maturity, what you need to do to get to your 3 to 5 range. So right now I'm talking 1 to 2. So the first thing you got to do is build organization. I strongly believe, because I've been in operations, I've been in a lot of different roles, now stepping back as a security guy, having people that really know what security is really imperative to your success. It's just like saying, okay, I'm going to have the network guy go write our development applications. They don't know the skill set, so they're going to wing it, and they're going to make it work, but it's not going to be effective as it could be. So really need to make sure that you get people that are trained in this field and understand the intricacies of what it means. So you start there, and then the next thing you're going to do framework analysis. Everybody, or show of hands, people who have done framework analysis or gap analysis are using frameworks today. A few of you, okay, maybe a little, about 40%. The ones who haven't, you need to start raising your hand, because you got to do that. And I'll give you the easy way to start is there's 2 of them that are pretty simple. NIST CSF, that's the cybersecurity framework, and the SANS Top 20. Is everybody familiar with those 2 guys? Heard of them? Okay, good. Use them. That was one of my learnings. I didn't do that early enough. Should have. Now, in hindsight, I wish I would have, but that really helps you assign and identify your risks in your portfolio of your computer platforms. So you can take a look and say, I need to improve on identity management or vulnerability management or whatever it is. It helps you identify those. So it gives you a roadmap. And you can do it yourself. Self-assessment is totally fine as a beginning point. You don't have to call in a high-priced consultant to do it. Or you could ask Josh to help. But if you choose not to, you can do it yourself just to get an idea of where you want to go. Obviously, some people have regulatory compliance requirements. You need to sprinkle that into your needs and your requirements as well as part of that framework assessment. And the next step then is to start building your plan. So how many of you guys actually build a security strategy on how you get from here to here in the next 4 to 5 years? Show of hands. About 40%. Okay. Sorry, you other 60%, you got to do it. It sucks, I know, it's a lot of work and hard, but it really helps you communicate to management what you got to do and why you got to do it so they can understand, because speaking computer security geek to the management is not going to do it. And like Josh was mentioning, you really got to convey your message and the why. You have to sell it. And this is the good way to do it. The management speaks strategies and they understand it. So you might need some help. You can bring in some help to help you do it, but it's really important that you do it. So the ingredients in the strategy, of course, is that framework, and I'll show you one of those a little bit later on. Your regulatory requirements, any audit issues that you might have outstanding, and your business requirements. You might be a business that does applications for mobile devices, so you need to make sure you really emphasize that versus I'm a manufacturing, so we don't do a lot of that. Okay, so now you got your plan. So what do you do next? Well, you need to communicate that plan. One of the things that's vital is policies and awareness. Again, one of my learnings, we built our policies and they were a gigantic list of things to do. I think all of you know it. It's really not very user-friendly. It's not very easy to consume, but we put it out there because we know we had to do it, and it's a way to convey the rules, the laws of what we think it is right. One of the things I changed this last year, I went back and redid them all. It was very painful, but we built them on the ISO, or actually in the NIST format. So now when I do my NIST assessment, my questions and my policies match. It's easy to connect the dots. But the other thing we did is we broke the policies up into 2 sections. One is for the IT, the consumables by the technology people who have to do what they got to do. And we broke out the 1.5 page. It's just the users got to do their things. It makes it really easy to communicate to users that they've got to make sure that they handle their computer properly, or what a strong password looks like. But they don't have to know how to install antivirus on their machine. That's not their job. So that's why we've kind of really made an effort to break those things up. All right, and then the last thing is, as you're building these policies, I strongly recommend you get some committee to help you. Does anybody have a policy committee? Show of hands again. A small group, okay. Well, you should do that. You get input from the other functions in the business, as well as the different areas of IT itself. Applications, networking, other mobility, if you have a strong mobility need or cloud need. If they're separate groups, bring them into the table, because one of the things that'll get out of that is they'll help you. I mean, if they feel like they've had a chance to build the cake, they're more likely to eat the cake, right? So let them partner with you. Don't just do it in isolation in the back room. So now you got your plan. Now you have your policies. You understand what your goals are. Now you need to start baking the cake. So this list here of next to the items, the variable steps, depends on your organization, how mature you are in some areas, and some other areas you may need to improve on. But this is the core areas I think you need to really focus on. Your networking and endpoint security, these are really the basics. You know, your firewall management, your antivirus, your patching that Joss wants you to do, the device hardening, configuration management, these are all things you just table stakes. You got to do it. If you don't do it, get back. You shouldn't be here. You should be over there at work doing it right now, because those are important things to do. Other areas, cloud maturity, cloud security, and maturity around that, multi-factor authentication, if you have SaaS applications. How many have SaaS applications that they're using today? Okay, well, keeping your hands up. How many of you have multi-factor authentication with those? Most of you guys. Awesome. I'm not so sure. Maybe it's a promise. Okay. All right. So yeah, you should. That really, because the outside world is always going after those guys, and you need to protect them. I think it's a basic core thing. You can't not do it. It was one of our lessons learned. We did some of that first, and we learned a lesson. We got a smacking for it. So we have multi-factor on everything. So that's great. It's working. And if you're doing if you're doing cloud security or cloud applications from an infrastructure point of view, make sure you build your hardening, rules and controls, just like you do when you had the data center in the back room. The same things apply out there. It's not magic. They're not going to care about you. They just want to give you a device and give you a quick, response and access. But that's where they draw the line, and security's on you. We just had the whole thing go out with Amazon, a credential problem. So that's an example. It's on you guys to do that. Identity access management, we heard 2 stories about that, but SailPoint did a good pitch on that. It's really important that you do that and you understand what has to be done. There's some core things you got to do. Make sure that you got your account creation process and decommissioning process documented and managed. If you can automate that with tools like SailPoint, awesome. But that's a long road to go. To do some basics first, and then we'll talk about the automation next. Application and database security. I missed vulnerability management, sorry. Vulnerability management, big item. You need to do it, just like Josh was describing. It helps you understand where you are in the spectrum of risk. Is the bad guys, when WannaCry came out, how many people had to deal with WannaCry? Come on, you guys, just not 5 of you, all you. Stop it, you're liars. Okay, so the WannaCry, we all got the notice. Quickly, you got minutes before, actually it was Mother's Day weekend. What the heck, what were they thinking? So they gave it to us Mother's Day weekend. We have to do WannaCry, spend the weekend looking at that. How is your vulnerability across your network? So if you've got great vulnerability management, you got a quick report, you say, we're good, go home, we don't have to deal with it. If you're not, then you've got to deal with it. You got to get those patches out, and you're finding that out. So that's really critical. Saves your weekends from disruption. Back to applications and database security. Role management, access controls, code reviews are basic fundamentals. If you're not doing them, you should be doing them. And there's more things you can do later. I'll talk about that. Access logging. How many people actively capture all their logs for all their systems, their core key systems? Come on. You guys, that's like 10%. Stop it. You got to do it. You got to capture the logs. You got to know what's going on in your systems. Who's logging in or bad guys logging in. You got to start there. So you got to start capturing some data. We'll talk about soon how you actually make that data valuable to you. And then incident response, another one Josh spoke about. You need to have at least a fundamental. How do you capture an event? How you make sure that you got it tracked so it doesn't fall off the edge. There's some really big companies who've had some issues with not understanding they had a risk and didn't address it, and now they're in trouble and they're fixing them. But I think the people in the room know that. And there we go. So let me give you some bonus items. So some of my hindsight lessons learned. One of the things I did early on, because I didn't have enough staff and I didn't have enough skills, I went with an MSSP, Managed Security Service Provider, for the firewalls. So all that stuff on the edge was managed by somebody else because they had a maturity level that was way beyond mine when I started. So they're able to watch it, make sure it's up to date. Any events that they think are relevant to me, they would let me know and we would address them. So that's something I didn't have to staff inside, but I think it's very valuable. Anybody using MSSPs today? Anybody? Wow, small percentage. So most of you guys are doing it on your own. That means, I don't know what that means. It's interesting. So you can think about that. Do some soul searching. See if that really makes sense for you to do. Because there's other things you should be doing that may be more valuable than just doing that, watching that machine. Another one, get professional help. And I don't mean the psychiatrist. I mean, though it could help. It could help. But, get some help on the people that know, like SailPoint. I keep using them because we had a conversation. They have a good supply chain of vendors that really know their product, and I was challenging them, do they actually keep track of how good those providers do the work for customers? And they say they do, that's a great example. Something as complex as identity management, you can do it, and you're going to fail, and you're going to do it a second time, maybe a third time. I haven't heard anybody that's knocked it out of the park the first time. Anybody have a great identity access management system right now? You want to talk about it? Come on up. Okay. Well, you need to get one eventually. Some of the things like the basics of getting the accounts and who's accessing and their privileged accounts. That's all really important things to do, and get some help on that. They can really help you. And I talked about, the people that you need to make you do it right, the security people. You should have certified people, and there's CISSP is the certification I would start with. Find somebody, even if you get one as your person to help you guide the program and figure out where you got to go. Someone who knows it, because it's a very complicated area. It's not simple, and it's changing all the time. So you need someone that could advise you professionally. And then the last thing, everybody know what a red team attack is, or ethical hack attack? Everybody got one of those? Have anybody done those? Again, about 5-10%. If you're having challenges with getting budget because they don't believe what you're telling them about, the sky is falling and there's problems, you do a little red team test and show them that they got into your crown jewels and they captured all your passwords, and you show that to the management, they say, well, this is real. It's really a powerful statement. It's much more powerful than doing the framework analysis and showing them, well, this could happen, this really could happen. Showing them that it does happen is really a different statement. So if you haven't done one, do one. It could be very beneficial. It's a lot of work, but it's really worthwhile. So let's talk about moving your maturity now to the next level. You want to get to the 3 to 5 level. So that's all what you're going to start doing tomorrow, right now. All right, so you're going to up your game on your framework. Now, I started my framework at the SP 800, which is hard. Lots of questions, hundreds of questions. Anybody doing SP 800? Okay, a couple. How about ISO 2700? Okay, so the ones that have, it's a lot of work, but it's a level of maturity you need to move to. It's the next step in your evolution from the CSF and SANS 20. It's going to increase the amount of things you need to work on, and it's going to identify them. It's really the cookbook on making the really good cake. Before you just made cupcakes, now you're making a really good cake with multi-layers and little flyers on it. Okay, so you need to do that. And then you're going to reevaluate your strategy based on that. So now you got a whole bunch of new things you didn't know you need to fix. You look at that strategy again, the threat landscape could change on you, right? Obviously it does, it always does. We have new kinds of attack vectors and very clever things that people are doing. So you need to make sure you sprinkle all that into your strategy and any new, of course, regulatory requirements. So now you're building a better cake. So now you build this new plan, and to get to this stage, you might be 5 years into it. Like I said, 17 years to do where we are now. So it takes time, all right? So now you got a new plan, and let me describe some of the things I think actually help you understand your risk a little bit better. One of the things is metrics. How many people are actively using metrics in their system, program today? A few of you. Okay, I know metrics are hard. It took some people on my team called me Marky Metrics, because I was always on them. Come on, we got to get the metrics on us because they're going to tell a story. They really do. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it, right guys? That's the Peter Drucker statement, and it's true. It really helps you identify how you're doing and areas of risk that you didn't know about, and then you start peeling the layers back, and you can find out why. And then you start really fixing and make the next jump. And if I get time, I've got a slide, just one metric to show you on that. I think it's pretty powerful. Risk management. So this is now the next layer. This is the next level, right? So we've been doing security, and security guys have been focusing on getting things done and what they think is right. Now you need to bring the management into it. And that's hard because those guys, management guys, I don't know. I'm poking at you, okay? He used to be my boss, so I'm poking at him. Anyway, so you need to get the management where you bring in the business to really decide what the right risks are and where that risk appetite is. Before that, it's all on you. Everybody said, you just go figure it out. I don't want to really deal with it. You got to change that. They need to be part of that equation. And it's hard. It really is hard because they don't know the terminology. They don't want to necessarily spend the time to learn it. So you need to find that bridge between what we've got to try to tell them and how they have to help advise you. So those are things like steering committee. Right, that's one thing where you have not security people or IT people, but you have business people in it. That's really hard, but it's the right next evolution, and that's your 4 to 5 level that you need to get to. Data classification and loss prevention. Huge. It's something we started working on with my old boss here, is making sure we had classification, but not everybody was really following it, from secret data to confidential to internal to public. Well, we hunkered down and said part of the risk program is we're going to really laser focus on our secret data. Where is it? Who has it? What are their obligations to manage it? And that was still doing it. We're on our third year. Big journey. Lots of work, but actually good reward, because I think people are now getting it, that they own the data and they have to be responsible for it. It's not just Mark, the security guy, and his team. So I think that's really the next level of evolution. And then security analytics. How many people have some kind of security analytics tool? Splunk, QRadar, Logic? Okay, some of you. This is where you're going to take it to the next level. Losing my voice, apparently, my maturity thing. So, so the security analytics are really tools that help you react and respond quickly, accurately, and spend less time on false positives. Done right, you're going to get to the right things and you're going to knock them out quick. If you don't do it, you're still spending things on spreadsheets or lists and paper, and it just doesn't scale. In our organization with 30,000 employees, it just can't do it manually. You need tools like these that take all this data, all that log data I told you to start capturing. Now you've got the log data, because you're going to go back tomorrow and fix that. Now you stick it into this tool that put it all together for you, consolidate it, and then spit up the really important things for you to work on. And that really made a big change for us. We learned that there was things we didn't know that were in the network, because we've been able to improve the process much better. 18 minutes. All right, I'm doing good. Let's see. Asset management, I think that's important to know what do you got to protect. So I'm not going to go into that one too much. You can either do that through your own tools. McAfee does asset management. There's other tools that do that, or you can have another system that operations or somebody else provides, but you need to know that. And then the last one, how many people have a security architecture guy, something like that? Some of you, okay. Those guys are really important to you. They really can help build the whole program, the technical aspects of the program, tying the dots together. It's really important that everything is talking as ecosystem, back to that metrics thing. If I didn't have all the logs and all the various things that were relevant to me, I wouldn't be able to really get the true story. So an architect will help you do that and connect all the dots. So architecture guys, we love you. I'm pointing at you. All right. So let's talk about some of the existing services we did in the first, basics. So your network and your endpoints, you need to step up to the next level of next-gen malware. We have McAfee. I'll just let that out. But, we found out, then we added this next level, which in our case was Carbon Black. We found out that there was things on our network we didn't know was in the network. That was really eye-opening for us, and we said, oh, crap. So now we know, and there might be the next gen, but right now we've got enough to deal with those extra things. So the bad guys are able to get underneath some of our standard tools, and you need another tool. And I'm not saying today get rid of your McAfee or your Semantic or your Trend, but you need that next thing that shows that those things that are coming into your network you're not aware of. So adds more work, but gives you more satisfaction that you're actually stopping the bad guys. Communication awareness. This is your step up to your next game. Before, you're probably sending emails. You might have a portal that says something's going on, but gamification or challenge learning is something we've started doing, and I think it's paying dividends. It actually invigorates people. They kind of have fun. It's if you've been to Gartner's, or there's a lot of conferences now, you have things on your phone. You can finish challenges and you get prizes and stuff. So we decided, let's not beat them to death. Let's give them some carrots and see if that works. So we're going with the carrot model and trying to change how we do communications. Some other things that are been very interesting to our employees. I don't know if you guys have seen those on commercials now. It's like a man with a hand drawing on a whiteboard, and he's telling you a story. It could be a woman. I don't know, woman's hand possibly. But so yeah, the people really loved that one. That had the highest hit rate of our employee base. They just wanted to see what that guy's going to write next. So they're really interested in learning. So it was better than sending an email. Security passwords are important. I get that. I delete that message. So they want to see stuff like that. So up your game with something like that. It really entices people to join in. Identity access management, we touched on a little bit, but you need to do your multi-factor authentication and your single sign-on. That single sign-on is not so important to us, but the users love it. The fewer passwords they have, the happier they are. It did, man, yeah. So, and automation around that is great. So I think it's the great next step. You know, we're able to now see when Superman's involved in our access control program, meaning is John logged in Pasadena and he's also logged in Hong Kong at the same time? How's he doing that? He can't be from here and there. So you identify those things with some cool tools that allow you to do that. Cloud security, I think I've hit on that one. You need to do the same thing with multi-factor and access in there, so I'll just pass on that one. Mobility. How many people have an MDM? Mobile device management, and not the other MDM, but that, okay, so yeah, that's important that you have one, because one of the things it can do is it can enforce the policies. You've probably told people you should put passwords on your phone and don't jailbreak it, and here's your drone on your list of things you want them to do. And MDM enforces that. And in some, depending on which one you've got, you can also enforce how a user can get access. You don't want people just to self-provision their phone to be able to access their mail in your system. You want to provide that. So they have to register for it, because then you want to kick them off. Otherwise, they can stay on forever. So those are things that you need to think about. And vulnerability management. So I talked about the red team. We've been doing red team, blue teams, and we introduced the purple team. So those are the two colors mixed together. And basically you get the good guy and the bad guy in the same room together and say, okay, how did you do it? What'd I do? So you kind of exchange learnings. But the one thing I think is cool in the purple team, you say, here's my computer, break into it. And then I'm going to watch, I'm sitting at the table with you. I'm watching you do it. Electronically, I'm trying to see if my tools are observing you doing it. And he's now in, he says, I'm in here and this is what I'm doing. Do you see that? Yes, I see that. That's great. So now you've got tools. Now he does the next step. And when he does something you don't see, then he teaches you how to see what he's doing. So it's pretty cool. It really ups the game and it helps. It's really a collaboration between good guy and bad guy, red team, blue team. So I really advise you try to get there. It's a great next step. Let's see, incident management. We talked about having an IR program to be able to respond, but there's things you should look at like tabletop tests. So if you're not doing those, get around the room with you declare a disaster and you have your people do that. We usually do that. We've done that historically in DR world, right? We've always done DR tests. Everybody doing DR test, right? Come on, 100%. Okay, well, you should do the same thing with your incident response. You make up a fake incident, and you have everybody from the finance people and legal people and HR people in the room, and you make that. And it's kind of fun. They get to interact, but they learn stuff about what we're doing and why it's important to be able to prepare and act on those things. And automatic remediation is an awesome next step. So if your systems are able to detect that something's wrong, and you would normally do this action if you saw that, you have the computer system do that for you. So you can auto-fix things and remediate things. And that's definitely a cool next step. Analytics behavior is something we're starting to put our toe into. Anybody doing behavior analytics yet? One guy, two guys, okay. Yeah, we're starting to put our toe in that. I might catch you guys at the break and pick your brain, but that's the next future state. Let the system determine if somebody's starting to do something that looks wrong, shady, so you can get ahead of them, as opposed to he's already done it, now you're trying to catch him, right? I'd rather stop the guy than chase the guy. Okay, so bonus items, physical security. This was part of our red team. So we basically told the red team, I don't care how you break in, I don't care if you want to fish, you want to drop USB sticks, if you want to try to a tailgate, go to the internet and whatever. Just get in, and here's what I want you to go get. That was a really interesting exercise and fun for us. Well, fun for me. My guys weren't so happy about it because they had their hairs on fire. He's in. Is it really him? So yeah, they were fun doing that. But what it did show is that we had some weaknesses in our physical security. I don't have my badge, but let's say this is my badge. The badges can be easily cloned from 4 to 6 feet away. So the guy just sits there and watches you walk into the elevator and zaps your card. He makes up a card, and then the night he walks in. Doesn't have to see you at all. Pretty cool. So, okay, maybe you need to up your things from analog to or encrypted card, right? In some of the places you might need to do that. So that's really an important thing to consider. It's made us in the security group now thinking about, okay, how are the badge systems, going to be secured, and how are we going to make sure that people can't social engineer their way into the office? These guys are so good. It's amazing. Okay, so last thing on this, my bonus items, Internet of Things. I know this is new, but it's happening. Before our board meeting last October 2016, that was when we had that attack that shut down the DNS services. Remember that one? So of course that was like really hot on their agenda because it happens. Now it's happening, and it's real life. So you need to start putting some thought into that. What does that mean to you? What's Internet of Things? How are you going to consume them? If you make them, then how are you going to make them secure? Okay, so organizationally, there's some areas I talked about. I really think you need professional people to do this, and I won't go into all these, but these are the areas, the skill sets that I strongly believe you need to have that have strength in these areas. They may be individual person, or a person maybe take on one or more than these, but depends on the area. So, by the way, this deck I think is going to all of you, so you can take it and draw pictures on it at home or whatever, but it's for you to share and have access to. But all these areas I think are really important that you have skill sets in those areas specifically. Oh, one thing at the bottom here. How many have a project portfolio manager for their security projects? Anybody? Okay, that guy's with me. I tell you, you too. Okay, you got to do it. It transforms your ability to get your job done. Trying to make your geeky SME guys be project managers is putting the square peg in the round hole. Yeah, they can do it, but they're not going to be effective. Get a professional. I'll tell you, it's doubled our project capabilities. Things are going out the door faster than we ever could do ourselves because they know what they're doing. They're contacting people in advance. They're making sure the road is clear. So when you get there with your geeky tools, they can plug them in, and they're not a bunch of fighting about, oh, you never told me, you didn't give me enough time, my people, blah, blah. All that stuff goes away. Somebody's taking care of all that stuff. And then the issues, they're managing all the issues because not everything goes smoothly. It's one of the best investments you can make. Add a project manager to your team. Okay. All right, so I'm going to get into the metrics. I have 6 minutes left. Look at that, perfect. So I'm going to talk about some of the metrics that I've used, and I think maybe some of you could benefit. When I started doing metrics, I need to man up. When I started doing metrics, there was nobody out there doing this, so we had to make them up, and we kept failing and learning and failing. There's a lot of stuff out there. CB, Gartner, a lot of people have good ideas on how you should. Forrester, I'll make sure I took the Forrester plug. Have good toolkits and ways that from lessons learned on how you want to measure stuff. But some of these are some of mine that I use. Our maturity assessment, NIST and ISO ones, we say here's where we are and here's where we want to be. So actually when we finish our whole survey and we have these 400 questions and there's 30 questions left, we go through the ones we said no, we don't have, and we rank them and say here's the one that said we're supposed to do. How important is that to us right now? And we go through each one of those and we kind of vet every one to understand where we want to get to next. User awareness metrics. We track how people are doing, especially in our phishing exercise. So that's really important to us, and I'll show you some of that coming up. Various things, compliance monitoring, patching, antivirus updates. All these things are things we now monitor and track to see how we're doing, and it helps us really understand where there's issues, and it'll help you get ahead of some issues, and I'll show you one of those in an example. And then, of course, the validation side of the fence is you have internal, external audit people coming in doing their job and saying, you're not doing these right. You get your results from your vulnerability tests, your pen tests, your threat hunting, and your red blue team. So those are all good ways to see if you're doing well based on what you've learned from your metrics. So I talked about ISO 800. This is free. You can do this, and the CSF has it now too. So the whole NIST tool set is really cool. It's from the government gives you something good and for free. Wow. So this is a sample of what you can do, and you basically do the whole questionnaire, and it ranks everything in all the various categories of that various framework, and you can see where things you need to fix. So you put the graph together, and you can now communicate to management, these are areas we need to improve on, and now you have a roadmap, you know, as opposed to, gosh, I think we should fix that thing. Now, here's the thing, right? Here's your list. CEB does a really good job of taking those frameworks and put them in a format to rank yourself against other companies in your industry or the whole suite. So we've migrated to this. So now you can see, you know, the different bars show you, the gray bar is you, and the other bars are the other parties. So you can kind of get a feel for where you are. Also a good message to convey to management, right? This is where we are. So I've given you the NIST CSF, the 800, and the ISO one just as illustrations. This one actually gets a lot of interest in people. It's really, I think from the security perspective, it's overwhelming that people think that you might have 6 billion events coming in and out of your organization through your firewalls. That's like, what? How can that be? That's too much. Now, that's all the good and the bad. That's all the transactions. But then you start saying, okay, of those, 1.1 million of those are security malicious events. That's like, how do you do a million? That's a month. That's just 1 month. How do you do that? Well, you have tools and you have systems, and you might have your MSSP dealing with some of that stuff, right? Then you get down to, okay, what do I have to do? So in this case, there's 401 that some human has to go look at. That's one of us guys, one of your security guys or operations guys. What is happening? What is going on? Because we think this is compromised. Let's go look at it. Sometimes it's a false positive, so you just check it off and push it off. And then your final number, how many actual compromised. So this is a good way I've seen for our management to understand it and consume it. And then the tracking on the right hand, just showing trends over time. Hopefully things get better, but you can't manage attacks, right? People are going to come in no matter what. This next one is the one I keep talking about, alluding to. I started asking the guys, we get these attacks, and who are they going to? You know, right now we've been looking at them from a machine. This machine is attacked, and we just know so many. So what's happening? What's the root cause? So they started yelling at me because it's a lot of work to get down to that data, but we started picking out people. Well, first here's the sites that have those. Here's our top sites. And then we started breaking them down by business unit and the people, and we call these guys our bad behavior people. So they're doing things that cause them to get viruses because they think it's cool to go download a movie or cartoons or whatever it is they're doing, right? There's different categories that have a higher risk likelihood of. So now we actually go after these people. We give them 3 strikes. You know, I send them off to HR. First one, I get a notice from me. You're bad. You got to stop doing this. Second one goes to HR. Third one, see ya. So it's changed the behavior. The word gets out that we're watching them. They stop doing that stuff. So that's an example where you start taking this data, you pull it apart, this metrics data, and it really adds value, right? Next one here is where I was talking about, we use fishme.com. I don't know, how many people are using fishme.com? A few of you. The other one's using Wombat or Beyond, so many, okay, other guys. All right, well, in this particular case, fishme.com has the ability to take all your phishing results and compare them to the peers that are in their database, right? All the companies use it. So they have specific tests like, you know, the FedEx and the delivery ones, FedEx and UPS and Adobe. And so they build these standard ones that companies can pick and we use. And so then you can see how you're doing. So this is helping us measure our program. So this is the hit rate of how many people fail phishing attacks. So way back 2013, you know, we had 22%. When we first started this back in 2011, we started at 95% failure rate. That was the beginning of our journey. Like, are you kidding me? 95% click on this stuff? So it's taken years, taken several years, but now we're down to 1.5%. Now I have a manageable number. I can see we're making progress. I was stuck, you know, at the 10% level for a while. I was trying to figure out, why am I stuck there? Why can't I get past that? And we did some analysis, pulled it, you know, back, and we found, we call them repeat offenders. The same people keep failing over and over again. So now they get special training, right? So, after they get a visit from my guys, or they get actually they get a special training awareness, which is basically, you failed the UPS delivery one, now we're going to give you a training on the FedEx one. Here's the characteristics that you need to look for, so they kind of learn from that one event. Sometimes they'll fail for a different kind of attack, credentials or Adobe updates or whatever. So they get them again, right? But we start tracking those guys and we crush them. No, we don't crush them. We train them. So we make them really, get some education on this. And this, again, this is huge. Picking people, not computers, is really the changer for me, right? And last but not least, this is probably the 12th iteration of this heat map. This is all dummy data, but this now seems to be the format that management seems to like. It's a way to convey. Sorry, Sony guys, you're on here. It was just like a Sony event is the worst you could have, and we put that on the heat map. And actually, I take that back. We took it off. Sorry, and I just said it out loud. Sorry. But we actually have on ours. It's called that because it is for the board to understand. That's where you don't want to be. And in that case, so we just use this as a heat map. We show where we're making progress, where we're not. We're actually actively fixing things. So this has been one of our vehicles to show management and board what's going on, and it seems to resonate with them. And last but not least, when I was talking about your strategy, your plan, this one seems to work. This model seems to tell the message that the business people get. It's streams, various work streams and various areas that you want to work on in your next 5-year journey. So this is one of many ways you can share that. But so all this stuff I made for you, most of this is dummied up data. I just, you can see, but it's for you just to take away. It's a gift from me to you. And I think I'm done, huh? I am done. I'm done. Thank you.